The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Manfromleng. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our look at the player cards in the Dunwich Legacy Investigator Expansion for the benefit of new players. This is part 2 of our look at the Survivor cards. We're going to review a Chance Encounter Level 0, Bait and Switch, Oops, and Rise to the Occasion. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Just a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or are good in one particular deck get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the list of taboos or are bad for the game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these player card reviews. If you'd like to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty for the amazing art that graces the channel, Nicole Fiscus for the new Whisper in Darkness logo that I use for the podcast, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for the intro as well as the overlays. Thank you very much. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to our review of the player cards in the Dunwich Legacy Investigator Expansion for the benefit of new players. This is part 2 of our look at the Survivor cards. We're going to start off with a Chance Encounter. It is a one-cost event that has willpower and intellect skill icons. The Fortune trait: choose an ally asset in any player's discard pile. Put that asset into play under your control at the end of the round. If that asset is still in play, discard it. Thoughts about a Chance Encounter?
I wish this card had fast on it.
Yeah.
That's kind of a bummer, but at least it puts the ally into play, so you don't have to then waste an additional action getting it into play. Because if you had to do that, this card wouldn't function. But as it is, it's okay. I can see why it's in the box for Ashcan Pete to be able to get Duke back out in case he goes down for some reason. And it's also kind of nice to grab maybe Peter or Stray Cat or something along those lines and use their abilities again. But this card's pretty niche.
Yeah, I was thinking Art Student. You can bring back your Art Student, get another clue. I think my issue with Chance Encounter is that it costs an action to play, and then it has to have an ability. So you're not going to keep it beyond the end of the round. So that's a maximum 1 enemy phase for taking damage or horror for you. Or if it has a persistent ability, like say Dr. Milan, that is maximum 2 actions, barring shenanigans. But that's 2 actions you're going to get to use the ally that you bring back out. Spending an action just to get say +1 on 2 investigates. That's it. So you're looking at allies that have an ability when they hit play or have some sort of one-shot ability. So Stray Cat, Art Student, Lab Assistant. Yeah, but even so, pretty niche.
This card works extremely well with Art Student. I have been using it lately for that purpose, and it has discovered many a clue for me at High Shroud locations. Yeah, I wish it was fast too, but that would probably make it too good, so you are basically only getting 2 actions unless you have some sort of trick, like you're using Duke or using Leo DeLuca. The ally is discarded at the end of the round. There is a very powerful neutral ally, the Red Gloved Man, who is going to discard himself anyway. This can get him back, which is pretty good. It is a way to get some cheap soak, which can be useful if you know you're going to be taking an attack during the enemy phase. You grab whatever you can. You can grab allies from other players' discards piles, but I don't know how often you would do that in multiplayer, considering most people have their allies for a reason. And so just, if you're not playing Guardian and you just grabbed a beat cop, I mean, I could see situations where that might be useful, but I think generally speaking, you're probably going to be grabbing something out of your own discard pile. How would you rate this one?
I'm debating between a Bless and an Elder Thing, personally. It's pretty niche in the decks that you'd want to use it in, and even then you really have to build around using this effect to really get
then does Chance Encounter make the whole thing come together?
think barring Charlie Kane, probably not. I'm gonna land on an Elder thing. Like
Yeah,
even in the decks that you would want to put this in, it's not like the linchpin of those decks. So
yeah, it's an extra bonus, like getting to use an art student an additional time. Yeah, I'd say an
mm,
elder thing as well, because like if you happen to have space for something like this and you happen to have the right suite of allies, yeah, then just go for it. There might be some tricks in multiplayer, but they're not they're not exactly something to write home about. So yeah, I'd say elder thing.
I'm going to give this one a 0. I have played this one in a couple of different decks, and it has performed pretty well for what it does. I think it's nice if you're playing Ashcan Pete. I mean, Duke is so critical to your game plan that losing Duke is pretty traumatic, and so having a way of getting him back for at least a turn is pretty good. There is a level 2 upgrade in the Pallid Mask, which returns an ally to play permanently, although it does cost slightly more. Although in the decks that I have played this card, I have found the level 0 version to be sufficient, but that was a deck using Red Gloved Man, and he's going to leave anyway, so playing the level 2 version didn't make a whole lot of sense for that. But I think this card is pretty good. I think it actually allows you to do some pretty clever plays, especially with a card like Art Student and some of the newer allies that have come into play effects that are available out there. The next card is Bait and Switch. It is a 1-cost event with intellect and agility skill icons and the trick trait. Evade. If you succeed, if the enemy is non-elite, evade the enemy and move it to a connecting location. Thoughts on Bait and Switch?
this is a card I really want to like, but never really works out the way you want it to a lot of the time. A lot of the enemies that you evade either don't have Hunter, so you kind of just don't really care, or they have Hunter and they're going to move eventually anyway and catch up with you. So you need to be in a situation where you need to like be close to resigning or be caught in some choke point, and moving the enemy away at least like allows you to get further past the scenario. And those situations don't come up very often. So I don't know.
Yeah.
This could be like a card maybe you include for House Always Wins and then take it out of your deck once you're got some experience under your belt, but yeah, I don't know. And especially with it having 2 different icons doesn't help its case either.
Yeah.
At least it costs 1.
Yeah, well, the way you mentioned choke points, Dunwich does have a few of those. Like House Always Wins does. Extracurricular activity, kinda. Yeah. Essex County Express, that sounds fun. You can like shove something behind you. That seems pretty great. Let's see. Okay, because non-elite. Okay, so it works in Undimensioned and Unseen. And it's probably pretty good in Where Doom Awaits because you can like shove things to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I can see situations where you
Mhm.
would want a card like this, but at the same time, I feel like most decks are just geared towards combat, and
Yeah,
that tends to be a more efficient way of dealing with enemies.
exactly. Like I want to like this, but I think in practice I prefer the core card Survival Instinct because Survival Instinct kind of does a similar effect. It gets you away from the baddie, well, more than one baddie, in fact. It costs nothing, and it gives you a boost because it's a skill card. So
Yeah.
then what that means is that when would you want to use Bait and Switch over Survival Instinct? Yeah, I guess there are some cases in Dunwich. Like, let's say you're playing Rex, right? And you hit a location that is, and there's a few of these in Dunwich that are like 1 shroud, 3 per investigator clues. So you're gonna be sitting there a while, getting all those clues, and then you get like an enemy jumps on you. Yeah, I can see Bait and Switch working then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you don't want to use Survival Instinct because you don't want to get away from the location, but you're going to be staying there a while. Yeah, I can see it working there. It's still pretty niche though.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I primarily thought about, is if there's a bunch of clues at your location. Survival Instinct makes a lot of sense in most situations, except the times you actually want to stay at a location to discover all the clues, or you can use this to, say, push an enemy towards the the investigator responsible for enemy management, so it saves them a move. You can also use this to set up Dynamite Blast. Potentially, if there's another enemy next door, you push this into it, and then suddenly your Dynamite Blast is working a lot more effectively. But a lot of those situations are hard to plan for. Most of them they're going to come up in a game, and you're going to be like, well, bait and switch would have worked here, but since I'm not playing that card, I guess we'll figure out another way to solve the problem. Yeah. And I have been able to do that pretty much without playing this card for most of my Arkham career at this point. So yeah, the card just doesn't really see a ton of play. There is a level 3 upgrade in the Clutches of Chaos Mythos pack that is more versatile than this one. But yeah, I think this one boils down. It's sort of, the effect is interesting, but it's tricky to use effectively. And I mean, I guess the one reason you might want to play this over Survival Instinct is maybe in Wendy, simply because she has a preference for events that she can recycle, and you might get a couple uses out of this depending on the situation. But yeah, this is not a card that I have much experience playing. How would we rate this one?
I think this one holds on by its pinky nail to the Elder Thing token. I can see enough situations within Core and Dunwich where this type of effect would be pretty useful. Even in the first scenario of the Gathering as well. Like, you know, there's that choke point of the hallway, and being able to push ghouls out of the way so you can kill the ghoul priest can be pretty useful. So I feel like the scenario design does give you enough allowance, I guess, to warrant this. Maybe as a one of. I wouldn't play 2 of this, but maybe as a one of.
Yeah, this feels like card number 30 in your deck, where you know, if you find something else that like enhances your deck concept like at all, then it replaces this. But it's not like absolutely terrible. So yeah, I can go with Elder Thing as well.
Yeah, the price is certainly right on this one at 1 resource. If you are leaning into the Dark Horse build that Dunwich is certainly encouraging you to do, this is one of the cheaper events available. So it's not as difficult to play as, say, Cunning Distraction or something like that. I'm willing to give it an Elder Sign as well, or not an Elder Sign, an Elder Thing, sorry. Yeah, I could see playing it, but it's not a card that I immediately gravitate toward, especially if I was playing a scenario for the first time. I think this card might actually get better if you, say, played a scenario a couple times, or played a campaign and you sort of realized, okay, and you know, I'm playing X scenario, bait and switch can help me in this sort of situation, and then I'll upgrade out of it into something different after that scenario. But yeah, this type of effect is kind of difficult to use, and then you've got Survival Instinct there, which I think is probably better in most circumstances. So this one's tough to include. The next card is Oops. It is a 2-cost event that has 2 combat skill icons. The fortune trait Fast. Play after you fail a skill test by 2 or less while attacking an enemy engaged with you. Deal this attack's damage to a different enemy at your location. I understand why they did that from a thematic standpoint, but I mean, what I don't understand is this is obviously the combat version of Look What I Found, and I think this card would be a whole lot better if it, much like Look What I Found, just said, say, deal 2 damage to an enemy at your location. What do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, it's tough. What I also don't care for is the art in this card. It makes no sense. Like, the enemies aren't attacking one another. They're just kind of coming at you. It's weird. This is a weird card, I think, just in general. Yeah, you're just really not in many situations where multiple enemies are engaged with you and you're failing an attack, and you also want to spend 2 resources to deal damage to something. It's just
2 resources. Oof.
It is a lot. Yeah. So in Dark Horse, it's awkward because you can't. Yeah, 2 resources is awkward in Dark Horse, and Wendy has 1 combat. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know. At
okay.
least it has 2 matching icons. So if you
That's
need
true.
overpowers 3 and 4, this can be that, I guess. But yeah, apart from that, I don't know.
Okay, when would I want this? When does this kick in? Okay, you fail a skill test which you will last while attacking an enemy engaged with you. Deals attacks and damage to a different enemy or location. Okay.
Does it
Okay,
work
so
with Swarm?
oh, I don't know. I don't know, Nate. Don't open that door.
Because like
Deal
if it works with Swarm, then sure. Then you could use it against Swarm enemies.
Deal this attacks damage to a different enemy at your location. Okay, so you don't have to be engaged with both of them. That's good, but you do need that situation where you have 2 enemies in the same location with you, which already doesn't happen very often, and
And
you
it has to
attack.
be damage. It can't be horror that it deals. So
Oh, that's right. It's this attack's damage. Oh yeah, well you're the one doing the attack, so your attacks only do damage.
it's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. I see what you're saying. Okay, deal this attack damage to a different enemy at your location, and then white space that could have been some flavor text.
So I guess it's like, okay, so I guess the art is like you're trying to shoot at the one in front of you, but you shoot at the one behind you instead, I guess.
Oh yeah, you can see the little bullet hitting the guy's head, like in the back. You can kind of see it. This, you know what? And you know what? Also, there's some flavor fail because this really should have had quotation marks. Like, look what I found.
Mhm.
Yeah, it really should have, and it should have had really funny art, but it fails on both counts. And it doesn't even have any flavor text. It's just got white space.
I have played this card in a combo Wendy deck back in the day, primarily for the 2 combat skill icons, not the text. So I guess if you need, like you said, overpower 3 and 4, I don't think there are many other cards besides this and overpower that actually give you 2 combat skill icons. That's very rare, but I mean,
Not at this point in the card pool. Yeah, for
really,
survivors, yeah.
surely there are better cards that you can put in your deck that will be more effective than just besides the icons. I guess, I mean, one of the key targets, I think, for this, in at least in Dunwich, could be the whippoorwills, who are really annoying because they're aloof and you'd have to engage them. And say you're at you're at a location with another enemy and there's a whippoorwills flying around, and the whippoorwills cause you to miss the attack because of their skill modifier, and then you kill the whippoorwills. I guess that's an option, but yeah, here's another card. Much like Bait and Switch, this is not a card I have played outside of that one particular deck for the 2 combat skill icons. And honestly, I don't foresee myself playing this in many a Survivor deck. Honestly, I don't see myself playing this in many a Survivor deck going forward. There is a level 2 upgrade in the Return to the Dunwich Legacy. Again, Return to the Dunwich Legacy, unfortunately, is filled with a lot of upgrades for some of the worst cards in this set for whatever reason. So, yeah, how would we rate this one?
I think this one is also clinging on to the Elder Thing token because of its 2 icons. That alone, I think, is enough to make a card playable, honestly.
Oh, the 2 icons.
At least in standard difficulty. Like once you get into hard and expert, then this card kind of falls off the radar entirely.
Not good enough for me. I'm gonna give it a tentacle. Just play overpowers instead and don't miss. How about that?
Yeah, it's really funny to compare this card to Look What I Found. Look What I Found basically being a staple of almost every Survivor deck that can play it. And then its combat counterpart, which doesn't see play, and really, I think I agree with you, Mattastrophic. The 2 combat skill icons aren't enough to save a card with such a bad effect. So this one gets a tentacle from me. as well. Surely there are better cards that you can play, and even if you're playing, say, Zoe, who can take this card, she's got better options that she can deal with, that she can take. So this one is staying in the box for me.
If you could use it to deal 2 damage to the same enemy you were trying to attack, and you did not need 2 enemies at the location, then I think it'd be kind of fine. Whereas, look what I found. It doesn't say you have to discover 2 clues from another location. It doesn't say any of that, so it would be appropriate.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. Like, look what I found. It's like, I failed investigating. Oh, here are 2 clues anyway. Like, it seems like it would have been so simple for them to say, like, oh, I failed to shoot an enemy. Here's 2 damage anyway. But unfortunately, that's not what happens. It's that the fact that you have to have a different enemy at your location that really sort of sinks this one, because, like you said, that just doesn't really happen all that often. Maybe more often in multiplayer, but it's pretty rare when I play solo that I've got 2 enemies bearing down on me. So the final card we're going to look at is a skill. This is Rise to the Occasion. It has 3 wild skill icons. The innate trait, commit only to a skill test you are performing, and only if the difficulty of that skill test is at least 2 higher than your base skill value. So this is similar to the Seeker card, Inquiring Mind, that is also in the box. Both have 3 wild skill icons. Both have a requirement. In the case of Inquiring Mind, there has to be a clue at your location. And for this one, you have to have relatively low skill values compared to the target. What do you guys think about this one?
Well, this is certainly not Inquiring Mind. It's not terrible. It does combo very nicely with other skill cards. So, like, say you need to evade a really difficult enemy, you can, like, use this to get you a pretty good chunk of icons and then combo it with something else, like Survival Instinct.
Yeah.
And then that's pretty good. But if you're not using a lot of skills, this isn't great. It is nice in Ashcan Pete as well. Say you use Duke for a turn, you move and investigate a location. You can commit Rise to the Occasion on the second investigate.
Yeah.
Or if you don't need it, you can pitch it and then ready Duke and use it for something else, which is nice.
Yeah, I like that. I like how Ashcan Pete has, like, every card in his hand. Wendy too, by the way. Every card in her hand, like, has an alternate use. So that's pretty nice. It really kind of helps a lot of Survivor cards, to be honest, because the cost of playing, like, a very niche card that may or may not be useful is much lessened for the 2 of them, because they can always be pitched to do something else. Okay. The Rise to the Occasion. All right, so this isn't going to be great in all investigators, because you're looking at tests where your base value is probably like 2 or less. Like the number on your investigator card is like 2. So because it's really rare to find like a 5 evasion enemy for Ashcan Pete to use this on. It's rare.
I think most often you're probably going to use it to investigate a 4 shroud location.
Yeah,
with Ashcan Pete, because he has 2 intellect base, so you can commit this and then maybe commit something else, or combo. Look what I found with it to grab 2 clues.
Yeah. One thing that is really nice about this is that, okay, so it's base skill value. So a little bit of rules is that, so that is the number on your investigator card. It does not include things like magnifying glass or beat cop or holy rosary or anything like that. So what that means is, and that's something I'm going to actually plug here for Ashcan Pete. That means if Ashcan Pete is playing like magnifying glass and Rise to the Occasion, like, he's in a pretty good place to deal with like 4 shroud. Yeah, 4 shroud locations. Yeah. It's not bad. I think in certain investigators it's a lot better than others. Honestly, I'm thinking Min from Carcosa, because it lets her evade things that are tough to evade.
I don't really like this card in this particular set. I think it's quite difficult to use effectively in all of the investigators that can take it, like Ashcan, Agnes, and Wendy. You're basically, in all of those investigators, you're using it just for investigating, and it doesn't really, you can't really play this against, to fight or evade, simply because they're the combat, the base skill values, even at 2, it's too high a lot of the time. Like, you just can't use this effectively. This card's stock goes way up once you get some of the investigators that have 1s across the board, namely Calvin from the Forgotten Age, Preston from the Circle Undone, and Charlie Kane, who will be released in the Scarlet Keys. All of them have 1s across the board. That makes this a lot more versatile. There is a level 3 upgrade in the Return to the Dunwich Legacy that changes the restriction and adds more wild skill icons, which makes this card a lot easier to play in a variety of investigators. But I think in this particular set, I just think you've probably got better options. How would we rate this one?
I think in Wendy, this is probably an Elder thing because you have lockpicks. In Ashcan Pete, it's probably a 0 because, like you were saying earlier, Matt, you've got that kind of like back pocket ability to just discard it and ready Duke, which is always handy. I think overall, I'm going to give it an Elder thing. I think it's okay. If you really need a way to investigate, which I think is primarily the way that you're going to use this within the context of Core and Dunwich, then it's okay. Maybe you help the team out by grabbing a couple extra clues here and there with this card, but yeah, I think apart from that, it's not really that useful.
I'd feel a lot better about this card if certain investigators could reliably use this on willpower tests. The problem is the investigators who can take this, their willpowers are already pretty good. Like Wendy's is 4, Ashcan's is 3, Agnes's is 5. Yeah, like Rex is 3, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the investigators who I'd want to take this, I'd want this card for something like a really important willpower test that I really want to throw everything into, in order to pass it. Like say Frozen in Fear, which is like really nasty if that stays on you for a while. But like I said, the problem is that the investigators who can take this, their willpowers are too high. So I think I'm going to give this an Elder thing because it doesn't give you like the Hail Mary willpower test that you like really want. Yeah.
I played this card shortly after it was released in an Ashcan Pete deck and found it very disappointing. It was one of those cards, I kept taking skill tests. I'm like, well, I've got this Rise to the Occasion in my hand, and I was never able to use it because of the Ashcan Pete's base skill values were just high enough. I'm going to kind of break our rules here, and I think, in Core and Dunwich, this is definitely an Elder thing. It's just not a card that I would play, but I'm going to give it a Bless token simply because I don't want to give people the wrong impression that this card is bad, because it gets much, much better once you get those investigators that have 1s across the board, and suddenly this applies to a whole lot of tests that they are taking.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Maybe not play this in Ashcan, Agnes, and Wendy, but this is one of those that does get way better once your card pool expands, and the level 3 upgrade is pretty nice as well, because it does change up that at least 2 higher, so it makes it a little more easier to play than this version.
Yeah, that's actually a really important point. And it's not just Preston and say Calvin and Charlie Kane who do well with this. Like personally, I find like Finn Edwards from Forgotten Age, like his real Achilles heel is his 1 willpower. He can take Rise to the Occasion, and then all of a sudden he's at 4 willpower for dealing with like Frozen Fear. So that is a really good point. Like once your card pool expands and you start getting investigators that have like really lopsided stats, then this gets better.
Yeah, and I'd say like the obvious target for this would be Wendy due to her 1 combat, but I don't think Wendy's fighting all that often, so including this just to kill some rats or something like that is not really ideal. So That's going to do it for our look at the second batch of Survivor cards in the Dunwich Legacy Investigator Expansion. Let us know in the comments down below what you think. Any final thoughts?
And the first set of Survivor cards were cranked all the way up to 11, and then it seems like they just turned the dial all the way back down to 1 for this patch.
Yeah, we got some really niche cards this time. Like, really niche. Yeah. Except for maybe Rise to the Occasion, that's a little less niche, but still, it's in core Dunwich. It kind of is. Yeah,
it's pretty startling, the shift from Elder Sign, etc., to a lot of Elder Things and Elder Things that are hanging on by fingernails to avoid becoming tentacles.
Yeah, we gotta scratch our heads to figure out like where they're useful at all, you know.
Yeah, the Survivors got, and I think that's going to be the case with the upcoming reviews as well in parts 3 and 4. The Survivors were heavily front loaded in the first batch, and it's going to be some pretty slim pickings going forward. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromleng@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromleng. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your Elder Sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.